Welcome back into another episode of Where the Game Lives On, the official podcast of the Missouri Sports Hall of Fame. If you're watching on YouTube, you can probably tell right off the jump. If you're listening, you probably have no idea. We've got a little bit of a new setup in the podcast studio, a new desk we got courtesy of some of our charitable friends that were looking to get rid of it. How do you feel about it, Byron?
I love it because now I don't have to feel all insecure about being exposed to the world. I can just sit back here and not worry about how I look as I sit out there exposed. So.
We're both behind a desk. It's definitely a little more like conversational, I guess, too, because we're not kind of sitting, cockeyed to each other. We're sitting right in front of each other. It's definitely a little bit of a better setup. We've got all of the usual gear and whatnot out though, and you can see all the memorabilia. So it's cool. It's a little different. It might take a little getting used to, but we'll have no problems with it. Season 2 already in episode 7 for people wondering. Season 2 will take us through the end of the 2023 calendar year. We will likely still have some other guests on throughout the season, so be on the lookout for that. A little bit of a Halloween recap, I guess. We did have the Halloween holiday, but before the week festivities, you had a weekend party at your house. How was that?
We had a get together. I was actually off out of the office last Thursday and Friday because courtesy of my kids, our family Halloween costume was dressing as Christmas. So former CEO, executive director of the Hall of Fame, Gerald Andrews, aka my father-in-law, and my mother-in-law dressed as Santa and Mrs. Claus, and I dressed as my son, and my wife dressed as my daughter, and our kids were elves. So when people showed up on Friday evening expecting Halloween decorations, they saw Christmas lights and trees and a 20-foot Santa blow up and different things.
That's
so
funny.
It was definitely a successful surprise. So
are you guys typically a family though that like you put up the Christmas right after Halloween and have it up for
and usually like whatever the Saturday after Halloween we're switching to. We actually had a big discussion this weekend with some folks from church about how that he can't get in the Christmas spirit until the day after Thanksgiving. And at our house, there's so much Christmas stuff that goes up that if I only got to put it up for a month, it's not worth it. So we're gonna get a couple of months out of it. So
I'm kind of like that too. I think Thanksgiving is maybe my favorite holiday. So I like to not jump ahead to the Christmas, but my fiance and I kind of go back and forth on it because she feels the same, right? If you're going to go through the putting up the tree and the decorations and the lights.
We actually spent the other night, Monday night, we spent putting all of the Halloween totes and boxes back in the attic and then putting all the empty Christmas ones back up so we could park in the garage. I mean, that took... Just putting totes back up was 2 hours. So, I mean, like I said, there's a lot of decorations and it's not worth it if it's only there for a few days.
It does seem to come down faster though, than it goes up always.
It definitely putting it back up or putting it back in the totes takes way less time than spend. I mean, I basically worked on it evenings last week and then all day Thursday and part of Friday. So we got it up.
It was an entire thing for sure.
Anyway.
I'm curious. I've always seen the pictures of your family with the kind of like, coordinated costumes that you guys do. You said you guys dressed up as kind of the Christmas theme this year. Looking back, what's kind of your favorite family costume you guys did?
So this is the 5th year that we've done the family costume. The first year was definitely the best and my favorite. That was the Addams Family. We did Friday Night Lights with Coach Taylor and Tammy and
That's right.
Tim Morgans and Lila Garrity. We did the Avengers. I was Fat Thor, not Husky Thor. And then last year we did, because my kids love Harry Potter, we did Harry Potter. I actually spent an hour in a chair at a salon getting made up as Voldemort. Is that right? Mm-hmm. Is that the guy with the gray face or whatever? So anyway, I didn't have a clue who the characters were, but that was last year. And then of course this year, Christmas. But Addams Family was definitely my fave. We actually had a friend of mine lives in Colorado, submitted our family picture as the Addams Family in a contest in Colorado and won a costume contest
Wow.
photo, so that was kind of neat. So anyway.
Going all out with the makeup and all that. So
That's good.
what about on Halloween? A little bit of trick or treating.
My son was actually sick, and so that, I mean, it's 20 degrees outside. I wasn't overly disappointed. My daughter's kind of graduated to that. I'm not going door to door. I just want to hang out with my friends, kind of deal. So
you get to that age.
Yeah. So it was very low key.
Yeah.
Not a lot of door to door in the 20-degree weather. So.
Yeah. My my family right now, we're on the older side. My fiance and I and my brother and his wife, we don't have any kids or anything. So there's no trick or treating or anything, but we had a little kind of like soup chili get together type thing. Yeah. And that was the whole thing, is you had to dress up as like a couple's costume or whatever. My fiance and I dressed up as Willy Wonka and Violet Beauregard.
Okay.
But it's not, we didn't mimic the Gene Wilder like original Willy Wonka. We dressed as the Johnny Depp one. Go. So we went to the family one and everybody's like, "Who are you?" They didn't know it. And then we went to another get together with some people my age, and we were like the hit costume, because everybody my age, that's like the Willy Wonka that they grew up on, So it was fun. She went all out. She did like the makeup thing where, she had like the purple on her nose, because Violet turns into a blueberry.
Okay. So I'm not a Willy Wonka aficionado, I guess, but we had someone come to the party Friday and was dressed like that and was carrying like the golden ticket thing.
There you go.
So I guess that's who it was.
Yeah.
All I know is it was from Willy Wonka. So
that's fun. We'll eat some candy at least though, on Halloween. Yes. What's your favorite candy bar?
Well, the best candy bar, and this honestly could be a future bracket, who knows? But,
absolutely.
But the best candy bar of all time is 100 Grand. It's got everything you need. You got the caramel, you got chocolate, you got Rice Krispies. So that's my favorite. Now, it's hard to find. People don't do it as much, but
that's definitely an underrated candy bar.
The most underrated candy bar of all time is Twix.
Is Twix?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
See, so myself, I'm not a big caramel guy, and really, I probably would pick like kind of like the fruity soury candies over like the chocolate.
You pour caramel on a pile of cow manure, and I probably would eat it. So.
If I had to pick though, like a candy bar, and it's not even a bar, I would go with Reese's.
See, and I was fixing to say, everyone talks about Reese's being a candy bar. It's round. It's not even a bar.
It's a cup. But I'm a big, like, if I had to pick a chocolate, it would be chocolate with peanut butter. That's my go-to. We can talk about Halloween. We could talk about probably the whole podcast if we wanted to. But we'll get into some sports news. We have had some wild Southwest Missouri Conference realignment.
Yep.
Let me talk you through all this, and then we'll break it down because it's pretty extensive. It started with the Ozark Mountain Conference being formed with several teams from...
Well, probably started with some Big 8 teams jumping to the Mid-Lakes.
I guess that's true, yeah. So it started even with that, and then you get the Ozark Mountain Conference being formed. And so that kind of begins the shuffle, right? From there, in short, it looks like the Ozark Conference is going to dissolve, and that's exactly what's happened. The COC, Central Ozark Conference, invited 4 schools to join. Kickapoo and Glendale accepted invitations right off the bat. That was followed by Camdenton, Lebanon, Rolla, and Waynesville. Those are the 4 schools that then got the invite to the COC. Lebanon and Waynesville accepted to join the COC. Camdenton declined and announced it will be joining the Central Missouri Activities Association, which is up towards Jeff City area. Yeah. Yep. Rolla's future following the Ozark Conference still unknown after declining invites to both the COC and the CMAC. So don't know where they'll go yet. I wouldn't be surprised if it's St. Louis area because they are already pretty much halfway, if not more, there. Where it gets interesting beyond that, Parkview and Central, other Ozark Conference schools, will join the COC in all non-football sports. So in football, they will remain independent to basically create the most, competitive schedule that they can have. The other Springfield Public School, Hillcrest, is joining the Ozark Mountain Conference, which was originally at its inception 6 schools. It currently sits at 7. We'll see if that's how it sits for 2024. It likely will be. But with that, that's kind of where we sit. In short, the Ozark Conference has dissolved completely, which if you look at it on paper, makes sense. You have a large variation of Class 4 to Class 6 schools, and the competitive range in that conference was pretty drastic. But I'm curious. I think probably the COC is the biggest question at this point in terms of what will the structure with the new teams be. You're going to be looking at 12 teams total in football and then 14 in all non-football sports. I think the most logical solution, and it's been hinted at in some of these releases, is that you will have 2 divisions that make that up. Now, how do they do that? Do they just split it evenly based on skill level? Do they do it based on, a higher level where they have like a COC small and a COC large like they once did at some point? I don't know. I don't think that's the case, being that, like, especially with Central and Parkview not being in there in football, because let's be honest, football is definitely kind of the determining factor.
Well, based on the releases that I've seen, and this is all basically reading the invite to Camdenton, Lebanon, Waynesville, based on, it's like, I think it was a letter from the superintendent of Nixa schools. I maybe was in charge of the or the COC or something. But anyway, the invite basically stated out that eventually, and not next year, but eventually, that they would divide the conference into 2 divisions. And it specifically referenced, and I don't remember the exact language, but it was not based on geography. It was not based on
enrollment.
It was kind of, I don't know. It didn't really. It basically said what it wasn't going to be based on, but it really didn't say how that was going to be determined. It was kind of we're going to do it, but we don't know what it's going to be yet. So, yeah, I mean, I think that 2 divisions makes sense with 12 to 14 schools. And then, of course, they would, I guess the big question is first of all, I understand Central and Parkview. I believe if they were playing football in the COC, they're trying to build their programs, and that's not the way to do it.
Central's a very new program still.
Yeah. And so if they're able to compete, perhaps even on the Mid Lakes levy. I'm not saying that they're going to join the Mid Lakes for football, but competing against those type of schools, where you can actually compete and grow your program. It's difficult if you're going 0-10 and losing, they probably would in the COC. That's not going to help. So I can understand that completely. Hats off to Josh Scott, Springfield Public Schools. Obviously, kind of navigating. He wants to do what's best for the 5 Springfield Public Schools, and I think that he's put all 5 of these schools in a position to succeed moving forward. So hats off to him and his staff, whoever was in charge or responsible for that. But I don't know. It's just exciting. It's a new era, I guess. I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of traditionalists that are like, this is bad, but I mean, how long ago? I mean, I don't know what happened before the COC large and the small. I didn't really like it in terms of, let's just call it, I mean, they're 2 separate conferences, so let's don't have large and small. So I'm not a favor of that, but anyway, just a interesting time coming up.
I think what I've thought about is with it being this many teams, and I'm relating it all back to football here. When you have 12 teams in football, you're only playing a 9-game regular season schedule. Now, if you split that up 6 and 6, you're going to have your 5 teams in your division that you play year in and year out. What I don't want to see happen, though, is for you to have, if there's hypothetically an East and a West division, I don't want there to be 2 conference champions. I'm not saying this will happen, and I doubt that it will, but what I would like to see is that you play your 5 games in your division, and then you have a rotating schedule that you play in the cross division each year. But I would like it to be an 8-game schedule.
So week 9 is like
you play the crossover team, right? And obviously that 1 seed matchup from each division is,
and you don't
know
who you're playing at the beginning of the year until you get to week 7 or 8, and then based on the standings. I mean, I think that's a great.
I think the only deterrent from ADs, coaches, anything with that is, we don't want to play a team that's if we're the 1 seed, we don't want to play a team that good or that evenly matched that late in the season. It could hurt our points. Well, I get that, but it's like, man, that's how every level of football after high school is set up. You have to play a conference championship if you're the best team in the conference.
Well, and I could see that happening. Now, the other thing, and I don't know how big of a deal it would be, is the logistics of not knowing, where are you playing? Is it home? Is it away? Budget reasons, do we get, how many home games do we get this year? Are we on the road in week 9? We don't know that. I mean, I think it would be great for fans to have that championship game, excitement. And then, of course, if you're, the 8th place versus 9th or whatever, however many teams there are, 7th versus 6th or whatever. But I think that would be a neat way to do it.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm excited. Like with the Ozark Mountain, you got 7. So obviously you're going to play 6 regular season games. That leaves 3 non-conference games that you can schedule. So I'm kind of excited about, who's Bolivar going to bring in to play in those 3 games? Who's, Marshfield? Who do we get to see Marshfield play? These schools get to, a chance to schedule some teams that they wouldn't otherwise get to play. Now, that being said, that your games that you've played the last several years against, these Ozark Conference teams in the case of Bolivar, or Big 8 teams in the case of Rogersville and Marshfield, and COC teams, I guess it'll be different to, not be playing those same teams every year. The other big thing that comes out of this is Lebanon and Camdenton. They're
Highway 5 rivalry.
They've played. I mean, they're bitter rivals in about every sport. And now you've got Camdenton going to the CMAC up, in the Jeff City, Columbia area, Lebanon. And so, is this the last time, outside of the state playoffs that we get to see Lebanon and Camdenton? Because Lebanon, of course, will have a full schedule in the COC. And presumably Camdenton in the CMAC. So
and it'll be interesting to see how they go about it. That definitely has kind of like that Oklahoma State feel right now, because those are 2 teams
leaving
and so it'll be interesting. The COC had the opportunity whenever the first 2 teams left to the Ozark Mountain, they could have those non-conference games, right? And so I feel like there's benefit to that. You play teams early in the season that it doesn't affect your conference record. You can, a tune up, for lack of better terms, even though that's not what it may be. But I'm curious to see if maybe you only play a certain number of teams cross division, and then you have like a true non-conference game.
I don't. If I was predicting, I assume that they will play the if they've got 12. So it's 6 and 6, East, West, or whatever division you want to call it. You play 5, and then you've got 4 other games left to play. Presumably, you're going to play 4 of the other 6 in the opposite division. I presume that's what they'll do. Yeah. Now, that being said, I'm like you. I hope they don't have an East and a West champion, because that's.
Yeah, it's not ideal.
There was a football coach a long time ago. It's kind of like a tie. He said a tie is kind of like kissing your sister. Yeah. So I don't know. I don't think having 2 conference champions really works. So.
Well, and it's like you're not the Central Ozark Conference champ. You're the COC East champ.
And it has the Big 8 East and West.
That's how they've done it. That's how they've done it. They've had 2 champions, and it's kind of like,
not a big fan of that.
But with those games, you talk about like Camdenton, Lebanon, or Branson Ozark is kind of like an old school rivalry. Those 2 teams, as it sits, appear like they won't play. I wouldn't be opposed to that, right? If you have one game on your schedule where you play like a traditional rival school or something, that would take so much scheduling though to actually make.
I don't know why I'm thinking of this. You brought up Branson and Ozark. Whenever you get on 65 south to go to, from Springfield to Branson, right after you get south of James River, there's a sign that says Ozark 7, Branson 41, like miles, of course. And every time I pass it, I always wonder if Branson has ever beaten Ozark in football 41-7 or whatever the numbers are. Because that would be.
I'm sure during the Coach Hancock days, there probably was a score that looked like that. But
I always think that every time I see the sign.
Being an Ozark grad, it's kind of weird because obviously your big rivalry is with Nixa. That's like the backyard brawl. Those 2 communities butt up to each other. But Branson, having been a longtime COC school, Ozark was their closest opponent, and it became a rivalry more so for them probably. But I think in the earlier days, it probably was a little bit more lopsided towards Branson's way. Obviously, you look at their teams now, and it kind of goes back and forth. They're both evenly matched quite often.
And now Branson in the Ozark Mountain Conference, you got Bolivar. That's where I live. That's you never really got to play Branson, especially in football. I mean, you play them in basketball occasionally, but so that'll be a future rivalry potentially.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's another part of this. There could be new rivalries. And
it's kind of as a parent with kids coming up, and they're not like necessarily athletic in terms of playing all the sports, but they're in middle school, heading into middle school. So this is going to be all they know.
Yeah.
Is Ozark Mountain Conference teams, whereas there was just a generation that went through not a generation, but 5 or 6, a full class of kids that we were Ozark Conference, and then it was COF. So it's kind of interesting as a parent, going to be going to, volleyball games and different things that you've got the Branson and Carl Junction. And so
it's funny. It's a super weird logistic thought for me, but one thing the COC did at a lot of the baseball fields when I was coming up is they would have banners of each COC school along the outside wall, and you're talking about 8 or 10 teams, right? Well, it's like, what are you just gonna throw them all away, or are you gonna change them out and have 14 of them hanging out there? I don't know.
Like,
it's a mega conference.
I've seen them painted on the walls too, so there's gonna be
some maintenance departments are gonna be real busy this off season,
right,
along with all the scheduling that's gonna have to take place. It'll be interesting. It'll definitely be 24-25 school year will be a kind of a trial and error type year.
It's definitely been an interesting past couple of weeks in terms of, and it, like I said, it all started with just a small ripple. I mean, it didn't really make that big a news, but Catholic and Hollister and Reed Spring going from the Big 8 to the Mid Lakes, and you're like, okay, that makes sense, I guess. No one had a clue this is what was coming. So, I mean, like I said, I live in Bolivar. I feel like I'm fairly in tune with sports and everything, and the whole Ozark Mountain Conference completely caught me off. I mean, I had no clue it was in the works. So,
interesting though, exciting times. Definitely to see how it reshapes the high school sports landscape across Southwest Missouri and potentially across the state, with playoff implications. We'll keep it rolling though. We want to remind you the helmet raffle. If you're watching on YouTube, you can see it still sitting here on the desk. Kansas City Chiefs full-size helmet signed by Andy Reid, Pat Mahomes, and Travis Kelce. We'll get to them right now. We will talk about the Chiefs from this past weekend. Really, our sports news today is just that the NFL is somewhat of a total mess, I guess, if you want to put it that way. There's just a lot of parity among teams right now. I mean, the Chiefs looked bad. The 49ers looked bad. Philly
49ers 3 losses in a row. That's crazy.
Cincy has 3 in a row, and the 49ers have 3 losses
Cincinnati,
in a row.
Everybody was like, what's wrong with the Bengals?
Yeah, they're
Super
winning
Bowl,
now.
AFC Championship hangover. And
it just keeps going, right? Washington has Philly's number, regardless of not being able to pull out the wins against them. They've looked bad against a division opponent twice. The Bills have looked shaky, but then looked really solid on Thursday night football.
I don't think there's any... The Chiefs up until this weekend looked like the only team that was on a roll, like, hey, we lost the opener, it's whatever, we've rebounded but I mean, I don't know if it's a weather thing, but you can't turn the ball over that many times and expect to win any game, really.
Yeah, so. And I don't know how you feel about the Chiefs. You're right. They had won several in a row, five or 6 in a row there or something after losing the home opener. But even watching those games and seeing them play Denver the first time on Thursday night in person, they just never looked really solid, and kind of the mantra of their team looks different, in my opinion, this year than in years past. They're not just going to be able to hang 35 on everybody and outscore them. Their defense really has to help them win games this year. And that's just part of it. But I've seen myself watching a lot of these matchups across the league the last several weeks. And I keep going back to the saying, like, anybody can beat anybody on any given Sunday. That's really what it feels like. But how do you feel about, like, kind of the Chiefs right now? And obviously, they're always in, like Super Bowl contention talks.
100%. I mean, they're going to be there in the end. They're going to be, competing to go to the Super Bowl. Fully expect it. Now, I think if you ask any Chiefs fan, or at least based on my social media feeds during Chiefs games, I think the biggest complaint, and has been for a while, is the defense can't stop anybody. The defense this, the defense that. You don't have to worry about Patrick Mahomes. I don't care if he's down 2 touchdowns. You give him the ball and there's time on the clock. You just never expect that they're going to lose. But I think the Chiefs' defense has been a concern for years. And obviously, you got to stop. If you can't score 35, you better stop the other team from scoring as much as you do. But so I think if, as Chiefs fans, I think would want the defense to be better. And probably a second option aside from Travis Kelce catching the football would probably be another Christmas gift for Chiefs fans. So
yeah, it's and I don't think their defense has I think they've made strides this year, but now they're kind of getting hit with the injury bug a little bit.
The loss of the linebacker
Nick Bolton,
that's going to be huge.
It doesn't help. But the Chiefs did fall to Denver on the road this past weekend. Mahomes was said to have the flu. I jokingly said there was no Jordan-esque flu game from him. He hasn't. I mean, his numbers are not comparable to a lot of quarterbacks in the league, but he hasn't put up Mahomes-like numbers.
I did not get a chance. I had things happening during the game, so I did not get to watch it. It was Taylor in attendance?
So that's the thing. Taylor was not there.
Okay, there it is.
Yeah,
there it is. Undefeated with her in the press box.
Yeah, that will then
skybox. So.
That's the story, right? that's the headline everybody's wanting to plaster right now. I don't know if you saw this either, but the Broncos trolled Kelsey a little bit after the game.
They did sing some T Swift songs.
They played the Taylor Swift game or the Taylor Swift song after the game. It's just. Let's make it about football. Let's make it about football. I mean, they just aren't playing.
It was the
enough.
first time they'd beaten the Chiefs in like seemingly a decade. So
2015, first time since so almost a decade for sure.
So yeah.
So them kind of being where they're at right now. Who do you like right now? Who's your Super Bowl favorite at this time?
Wow. I mean, I still think the Chiefs are going to be there in the end. I think the Eagles. I don't know what's going on with San Francisco. I don't know if it's we figured out how to defend Brock Purdy or what. But
Brock Purdy is mortal.
Three losses in a row is. I mean, they looked unbeatable.
Yeah, they were 5-0 and looked like they wouldn't lose.
So San Francisco and the Eagles. People mentioned Detroit. I don't know if Detroit. If I really. You're going to have to show me Detroit that you're not Detroit, so to speak. But
yeah,
I think Miami is certainly looking good this year. I don't know. Buffalo doesn't scare me, and I don't know what the Bengals have figured out if they've won 3 in a row. But they look dead in the water in the first few weeks. I mean, they were like scoring field goals, and that was it.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
I think the best thing going for the Chiefs right now. And it doesn't sound great, but I think the best thing going for them is outside of Miami and Buffalo a little bit, and now if Cincy's hitting their stride, but for the most part,
Baltimore.
Yeah, true. I feel like the AFC isn't that strong personally. I could be wrong, but if I'm going with one team right now, I'm probably riding with Philly. They've been there. They still have a lot of the same pieces. They haven't looked like the Philly of last year, but they find ways to win games.
They added Julio Jones to go with A.J. Brown. I mean,
yeah,
I'm sure Chiefs fans are like, wait a minute. What about us? We want another receiver. So
yeah, it's Julio is. He's late in his career, but that's what you're talking about.
Like touchdown Sunday.
Yeah, you're talking about like how much of one more piece can make a huge difference, right? It'll be interesting going forward just to kind of see, how it continues to shape out. I think the Chiefs are going to be all right, but I think it was Taylor sitting on here a couple weeks ago with me. He said, I think the biggest thing I have, right now against them is just injuries. If they're solid in certain aspects, but key players really help solidify their units. And so
I'm a Colts fan. I know all about the key injuries.
Oh goodness. Is Minshew still quarterbacking for him?
Unfortunately, yes.
Yeah, that's tough.
I think he has like 10 turnovers in the last 3 weeks. So yeah.
We'll hop on the question of the day real quick. We'll talk about some Mizzou football. They are heading to Athens.
Big game.
On Saturday. And we've said it so many times on here. The Mizzou Tigers, as of right now, going into this weekend, hold the keys to their.
Well, they control it.
Yeah, they control their destiny right now. They are listed anywhere between a 15 and 20.5 point underdog to Georgia at home. The last time Mizzou beat them was 2013. They were 11-2 that year under Pinkel, and they ended up beating Oklahoma State in the Cotton Bowl.
So I would not predict Mizzou to go. I'm not saying they're going to go win the game. I will point out that the one team that has consistently played Georgia tight the last several years is Mizzou, good, bad, or otherwise. Had them beat last year in Columbia. Should have beat them. And I mean, obviously, they didn't, but should have beat Georgia last year. And of course, Georgia went on to win their second national championship in a row. So This Mizzou team is better defensively. They're better offensively. They've obviously got a kicker that can bomb field goals.
Yeah.
They have nothing to lose. I mean, they're not supposed to win the game.
They're house money.
Yeah. So Georgia has not looked like the Georgia of old. Now, the thing about Georgia is they're stacked. I mean, they've had top 1, 2, and 3 recruiting classes for the last 4 or 5 years, and you're seeing that depth. And it's kind of like when Georgia, they haven't looked great this year for the most part, but when you get them in a game where they get focused, for example, Kentucky thought they were gonna beat Georgia. Georgia beat them like 51-12 or something.
Beat them like a dog.
Georgia, of course, rivalry game last week against Florida, pounded them. I mean, it was never in doubt. I'm not saying Florida is the Tim Tebow Florida or the Florida of the mid '90s, but it still a competent team. So Mizzou, I mean, they got to go win the game. I think it's going to come down. Now the key is Georgia's big tight end Bowers is out, and so that certainly helps matters. He's a legit top 5-10 draft pick if he wanted when he comes out. Yeah, but Mizzou can win it. Now I think that they cannot turn the ball over. If they turn the ball over, they're going to have to weather the first quarter because that crowd's going to be jacked. It's going to be, the atmosphere. I mean, I've been to a Mizzou game in Athens. Now it was the most boring game ever. I think the final was 6-3, but it was before Georgia became Georgia. But anyway, it's a awesome atmosphere. Sanford Stadium, and they got to weather that first quarter, but.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, Mizzou went to Kentucky. Now, obviously not the same thing. Got pounded, and I mean, they were down 14-0 in a blink,
and came back.
And came back. So that's going to be a key. Is just stay.
Yeah. To relate it back to the question, can Mizzou pull off the upset? I think Mizzou is capable of doing that. I'm not a betting man. I don't think I would put money on Mizzou, but I think they have a chance. This is a better Mizzou team than in years past, and Georgia is very good. Not trying to say they aren't, but you compare them to Georgia's of years past, I don't think they're quite at that level. So yeah, I agree. I think that it'll be a very tough game. They have to go out and win the game. And I agree with you a lot too on kind of the minor points is I think they have to win the turnover battle. If there's, on the road, you have to play a clean game. If they can do that, I think they have a chance. And then on top of that, I think it comes down to what happens in the red zone, right? Mm-hmm. Their offense has to be able to put the ball in the end zone, and then Georgia's going to move the ball, right? They're going to be able to have some success, but you're going to have kind of that bend don't break mentality. If they can hold them to 3 a couple times, maybe cause a turnover, win that turnover battle, I think they have a shot. Mm-hmm. The FPI we've talked about, Mizzou kind of getting hounded by the FPI. I think it's like 79% chance for Georgia to win right now. Mm-hmm. I think it's a little more evenly matched than that. Yeah. I know it's in Athens and it's going to be a tough game, but
I mean, if I'm Coach Drinkwitz, I'm playing up the fact that no one's giving you a chance.
Absolutely.
And no one expects you to win. Let's shock the world. Absolutely. Nothing to lose. Just go play, have fun, loose. Of course, if they win the game, you still got Tennessee coming to Columbia. That's not an easy game. You still got Florida coming to Columbia. That's not an easy game. I mean, they got their schedule's backloaded, so
it will be exciting though.
But it's all laid out in front of you. Yeah. I mean, all you got to do is go win in Athens.
Absolutely, and we will see what it sounds like with what we're talking about Mizzou football next week, because that's the thing. If they win next week, sure, they've got tough games ahead, but that'll be a very fun place for that program to be if they're able to pull that upset. So we'll keep an eye on it. You can bet that we'll be breaking it down here next Wednesday with our reactions from the game, whether it's a win or a loss. We are to the end of our time, though. We appreciate you joining us as always here on Where the Game Lives On. Be sure to follow us across social medias. Stay up with everything we've got going on at the Hall of Fame. We have an induction in St. Louis coming up. A lot of big names. We've been putting out some stuff about them here this week. So keep an eye out on that going forward. Also, the helmet raffle will continue through the end of this month. Don't miss out on your chance to win a piece of memorabilia that, quite frankly, not many people, if anybody's going to have, just sitting on their mantle or whatever it may be. So we'll see you next time on another episode of Where the Game Lives On. Byron?
MIZ.
COU. Can't believe I just said that.